Hey there, how there, ho there. It's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Cutter Top 10 compilation. And this is not going to be a sports one. A lot of people would be like, why are you not doing a top 10 about sports? That's your forte. Well, be that as it may, not everything is all about sports. Huh, that's what my mother says. But anyway, we are going to look at the top 10 Canadian TV shows of all time. Mostly due to the fact that Canadian TV lost a great icon by the name of Catherine O'Hara. She was in SCTV. She was in Schitt's Creek and a few TV shows along the way, but she will always be remembered as movies as Kevin. That's right. She was the mother in Home Alone. So we're looking at the top 10 Canadian shows. We did the top 10 Canadian comedy shows. Now we're going to do the top 10 Canadian shows of all time. And there are going to be some repeats from yesterday's performance. There are one, two, three, four, or four of the 10 shows did not um, become yesterday's thing. So anyway, here we go. Number 10 is SCTV. Well, why not? It's got to be the one with Catherine O'Hara in it. She was at the Second City Club being a waitress, but then she got to be on stage and she was a natural and people liked her. SCTV had a massive ensemble. You had Eugene Levy, you had Joe Flaherty, you had John Candy, you had Rick Moranis, Andrea Martin, Dave Thomas, even Harold Ramis for a time, and Martin Short. So yeah, SCTV brought a lot of careers in space. I mean, no, John Candy, Uncle Buck, Andrea Martin from My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Catherine O'Hara, Home Alone, Eugene Levy, the mockumentaries like Best in Show and Mighty Wind, Rick Moranis, Honey I Shrunk the Kids, Dave Thomas, and a few things. Harold Ramis made Ghostbusters in Stripes. Martin Short in Follow the Bride. You know, yeah, they had some great sketches. Johnny LaRue, Guy Caballero, Earl Cannonbear, Lola Heatherton, Prudy Scalazzo, Ed Grimley, Bob and Doug, the Mackenzies. Do 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 do, and many other characters. Even Robin Williams popped up. Well, SCTV actually had a two-season run on NBC, expanding it to 90 minutes, but unfortunately for them, it didn't work out so well. So yeah, but SCTV was still great. It was once a little known show on the global TV network, Second City TV, and then CBC picked it up for years, and then was it Miramax or Betamax? There was a Canadian pay TV channel that had the final season. Hmm. Number 9 is The Kids in the Hall, the one starring those five comedians and all that. Scott Thompson, Kevin McDonald, Bruce McCullough, Mark McKinney, and Dave Foley. I got it on the bounce without having to look it up. But yeah, those five guys were fantastic and all of that. I mean, everyone knows that, Dave Foley was the better of the five, like post Kids in the Hall. But yeah, CBS even picked it up for a little bit. But yeah, Kids in the Hall was amazing. It was an iconic sketch comedy troupe that pushed boundaries and influenced generations of comedians and all that. It was kind of before Air Force and 22 Minutes came in the thing. But yeah, Kids in the Hall was pretty impressive. I'm touching your head. Anyway, number 8 is Heartland, a family drama in Alberta's ranch country. For more than 10 seasons, it came through. Strong characters, beautiful landscapes. It was a Sunday night staple for CBC when it happened because it would always be like after the Disney thing. But yeah, Heartland was big and all that. And everyone loved it. I didn't really watch that, so I can't make too many things about it. Number 7 is Murdoch Mysteries, a long running detective series in turn of the century Toronto. So it was in the 1900s. Clever plots, historical details. Yeah, I mean, to turn Toronto into the 1900s is just amazing. I think they do it in Cambridge too? I don't remember. But yeah, Murdoch Mysteries was a pretty good show, and a lot of people liked it. Number 6 is Due Self. CTV basically had this thing. The first four had CBC ties, but Due Self did not have CBC ties to it. They had CTV ties, of course, the second network in Canada. Anyway, Due South had a drama and comedy about a Mountie navigating the streets of Chicago with Canadian sensibility. Paul Gross was the Mountie, and he played it quite well, and he loved every minute of it. He was kind of a sex symbol, if you will, down in the States and even up north of Canada. But yeah, it was pretty impressive what happened. But yeah, a Mountie in Chicago was just amazing to see. Number 5 is Kim's Convenience, bringing representation to the forefront in Toronto. So, a Korean Canadian family running a convenience store. That's a basic thing for, like, a lot of the convenience stores are Asian run and all that, and they do quite a good job about it. But yeah, Kim's Convenience brought the Korean culture into Canadian things, and it was heartfelt. It was a good look, and Toronto deserved to have it. But yeah, Kim's Convenience was just a good show. Number 4 is Trailer Park Boys. Lots of Americans know Trailer Park Boys and all that because of all the stuff on like HBO. But yeah, Bravo and Showcase in Canada had Trailer Park Boys. A mockumentary style comedy with the residents in a Nova Scotia trailer park. You had Ricky, the tough guy who would always do the get rich quick schemes. You had Julian, the level headed one, trying to help out with schemes and try to fend off the authorities. Bubbles, the lovable guy who was known for his kitties and his cart fixing and, his bubble glasses and his weird way of speaking. People probably thought he was mentally deficient, but he was not. You had the leader of the trailer park, Mr. Leahy, with Randy and all that, trying to have order and try to ruin Ricky and Cole's plans. You had Trevor. You had, what was that other guy's name? I would say Jamie, but that's wrong. But yeah, you had J Rock, the rapper, played by Jonathan Torrance, who actually had a hand kind of in setting the number 3 show in motion. But anyway, he was that, and then you got yourself a lot of people like Sebastian Bach. There were some celebrity cameos and all that. Reba McEntire, I think, was in that one. But yeah, it was Trailer Park Boys. It was amazing, their plots and schemes and all that sometimes work, sometimes don't. Number 3 is Degrassi Next Gen. You could obviously put the Degrassi franchise in it. You had the Kids at Degrassi Street, what people, Degrassi diehards forget about this show, Kids at Degrassi Street, CBC did 1979. Well, the first 3 episodes were actually yearly specials. Ida makes a movie, Cookie goes to the hospital, Ida gets a new neighbor. I guess that's what it's called. But yeah, they were just a year of things. And then CBC started adding more and more and more, like 3 or 4 per year. And then in 1982, they had like a show of like 15 or 16 episodes. It actually had some people like Stacey Matishan transfer from Lisa of Kids Degrassi Street to Caitlin for Degrassi Junior High and High. Junior High and High were popular both on CBC and PBS Boston from 1987 to 1991. You had Joey Jeremiah, Snake, Wheels, Radich, Yick, Arthur, Stephanie, Lucy, Bronco, BLT, Michelle. The list goes on and on and on. And then, Degrassi Next Gen came up in 2001. Remember when I said that Jonathan Torrance had a hand in number 3? He did. Because in 1999, he did his own show called Johnnovision on CBC, which was a teen talk show. And it brought back some members of the Degrassi universe, like, Joey, Snake, Spike was there, Radich was there, Miss Avery was there. Yeah, for example. And then they were exploring whether to add more stuff to Degrassi. A couple of years later, there would be a new show called Degrassi Next Gen, which focused on Emma, the spunky offspring of Spike, who kind of pissed people off the wrong way. But yeah, Degrassi Next Gen was amazing. It tackled real life issues and was a pop culture staple, both in Canada on CTV and the US on Nick. A lot of people were like, wait a minute, why didn't CBC get Next Gen? Well, it was mostly because CBC was limited. It's the government station, if you will, and they didn't have enough budget for stuff. CTV was public, so they could do the sets. They could do everything in Toronto, the community college that turned into the community school, and they could have better funding. So Degrassi Next Gen, brought characters like Emma, Manny, Liberty, JT, Toby, Sean, um, Jay, Spitter, Paige, Alex. The list goes on and on and on. And of course, Raditch even appeared. So did Joey. So did Spike and Snake to bridge from Degrassi High to Next Gen. And yes, Jimmy Brooks, aka Drake, the rap god, if you will. So yeah, he was in it for 6 seasons in a movie. Just kidding, but not really the movie. But yeah, Degrassi Next Gen, and then it spun off guys like Sinead Grimes and Nina Dobrev made their debuts in Degrassi, and then they moved on to 90210 and Vampire Diaries, respectively. And then you see a lot of Degrassi alumni pop up and stuff. Of course, Degrassi returned into the seasons 10 to 14 when it was more gritty, in the telenovela era where there was like 40 episodes per season when it was usually 20. And then, of course, Next Class, Netflix wanted to add more to it and make it more grittier, and it ticked people off. And of course, if you know me too well, I do tons of Degrassi playlists, so everything. Anyway, number 2 is Corner Gas. Corner Gas was set in Saskatchewan. It was not a CBC production like Degrassi Next Gen. It was CTV. So rural Saskatchewan, it was a classic, there's quirky humor, relatable small town life, and just a lot of fun, and put Western Canada on the map, if you will, especially rural Saskatchewan. Brett Budd played Brett, the owner of the gas bar, who kind of has his head in his clouds and all that sometimes. Wanda is played by Nancy Robertson, Brett's assistant, who has PhDs but cannot work anywhere except for the corner store, which was kind of weird. Fred Uruak played Hank, the perpetually unemployed friend of Brett, and he had schemes and all that. You had Lacey, played by Gabrielle Miller, who was the coffee shop owner of the Ruby, and trying so desperately to get people in Dog River to like her that she often ended up biting off more than she could chew. Oscar and Emma, Brett's parents, basically were guys who kind of needled Lacey a lot and, gave Brett a weird sense of direction. You had Karen and Davis, the cops, who were trying to keep peace and order of Dog River. You had Fitzy the mayor. You had lots of other characters too. But yeah, Corner Gas was big. It brought Canadian celebrities like Daryl Sittler. I would say Pamela Wallen, but that's wrong. Seamus O'Malley. Seamus O'Regan was in that one. Jen Arden was in an episode. I remember that. Tragically Hip were in one. But yeah, Corner Gas was just amazing. And number 1 is Schitt's Creek. Beloved, multiple Emmy winner, even though that was a Canadian show. Usually it's like Canadian shows are not eligible for American Emmys, but nope. They did. They must have won a lot of Geminis. That's the Canada version of the Emmys. But yeah, Schitt's Creek, it's kind of set in number 1, kind of because of Catherine O'Hara. It was a fish out of water comedy because, it was a rich family, lost their money, and then they lived in a town they actually bought. They actually bought a small town and, had to live in it. You had Catherine O'Hara as Moira, the mother. You had Eugene Levy as the father. Great SCTV connections. Dan Levy as the son. And I can't remember her name. Well, Alexis is the character's name, but I don't know the actress name offhand. But yeah, it was pretty impressive. And, Canada brought these guys to life. And, it was such a big hit that HBO's or some American streaming services said, screw it. Let's take the show from Canada. It's actually pretty good. It's kind of like the show You Can't Do That on Television. It started out very small in an Ottawa TV station, and Nickelodeon, in their infancy, found this show, which kind of was an anti-kid show, like anti-sugarly sweet show for kids, and basically gross out humor. And the green slime, that's where the green slime comes from for Nickelodeon. But the fact of the matter is that Schitt's Creek is a pretty good show, winning Emmys and all that. It brought people to the forefront and gave Eugene Levy and his eyebrows, which is strangely not gray like his hair, but yeah, prominence. And, I'm a Eugene Levy guy. That's all I have to say. And, you have 10 great Canadian shows. So wave the Canadian flag, why don't you? Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.